Hey, I don't want to give you the jiggles or anything, but this is when we're actually going live on Facebook. So, you know,
That's so funny.
yeah, that's funny. This is what happens when you make me interact with technology because I'm what you call a technology enthusiast. I'm like, what the fuck? Yeah, sure, I'll figure it out. I'll just press buttons, and then here we go.
Yeah.
So yes, this is the start of AmberCast. Um, Mihai Pohontu. Hello, my brother. Welcome back to AmberCast. This time, we really are doing this live.
Yeah. For those of you that are just seeing us now, we've been talking for the last 15 minutes thinking that we are. So we eventually figured out that we're not. But, I'm really happy to be here. This is, the season 4, as you called it previously, season 4 of AmberCast. And
This is season 4 of the best game development podcast out there, and the only game development podcast from Eastern Europe. And we're going to be talking about strategy, company strategy. We're going to be talking about how that has to do with game with Amber. You've done this 3 times, right? So this is pretty much the third time we are pivoting, and this is important. I think this is important for everyone to understand how we go through the process. And we're also going to be talking about a bunch of other shit, like people that this is what we were talking before, people moving out of California. We were talking about GameSpot fucking up the stock market. We're talking about drugs. So this is going to be good.
yeah, you guys missed a good one there. But no worries, we will come back to it because Gabi is really keen to talk about his psychedelic experiences during this vidcast.
Yeah.
I'm honored to be back. I was present, I believe, in the first edition of AmberCast, and we had a conversation in our Beatles conference room, kind of about the company and what we were doing at the time. I think it was 2017 when we first.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
so much has happened since then. We've had a lot of fun, isn't it, Gabi?
We didn't even have microphones back then. Now that was crazy. We just had one laptop and we recorded everything, and that's how Ambercast started, essentially. After that, we had the very lovely people from Stuck in the Attic. That was fun as well. That was the second best podcast that I ever did.
Come on,
Obviously,
Livio is so charismatic.
he is,
It
right?
was so much fun.
Yeah, and they have such a good game. I wonder if those guys are gonna be making games again.
Well, just invite them back to Ambercast, and I'm sure they'll love to tell you all about it.
You know what? We should do that. I mean, I think this is one of the blessings of what's going on with the virus and everything. We can connect to anyone. It's a lot more accessible. All of a sudden, it's no longer awkward to talk on the internet. You can just hit up anyone you want.
Yeah.
So this time, this is going to be a difficult podcast. It's going to be a very interesting podcast. We're going to be talking a lot of things, but essentially, we're going to be looking at the connection for a game development agency. We're going to talk about the connection between strategy, culture, and making games. And here's why I think this is important. Amber started as a boutique. So back in the day, 2013, then you joined, and that was, I think, the first time we pivoted. And now we're doing that again. So let's kind of deep dive into that because it's quite difficult for anyone who started a company not only to think about strategy but like to implement one, because most of us came into this industry because we wanted to make games. We don't want to think about strategy. What the fuck is a strategy, Mihai Pohontu? What is company strategy?
Well, let me introduce you to a concept that we call City of Amber. And in our definition, City of Amber is the ideal version of the company that we're building. And it's, kind of, it harks back to this expression, a shining city on a hill, which Ronald Reagan used, but it's not originating from him, actually originating from literature, 19th century. And it expresses this idea of a perfect form. If you want to go all the way back, it is connected with Plato's myth of the cave, right? That you have a perfect form that is projected on the wall of the cave that you aspire towards. And for us, City of Amber is the destination. Is the perfect form of the company that we're building. And to get to City of Amber, there's a journey. And that journey is not a straight line. It's it's a sinuous line. Many things can influence that journey: the shape of the market at any given time, the desire and aspirations of the people, and the journey is effectively our strategy. We are drafting strategy in order to chart a path to the City of Amber. And the city is so far in the distance we can barely make up its features, but we're building a body of knowledge about what the City of Amber contains. And that body of knowledge is our core philosophy. And it includes things like mission, vision, values, strategy, and then veering off to the present day objectives for 2021. And, we have done a lot of work in this area. You mentioned that it's a pivot for us. It's actually not a pivot, it's an evolution, the way I see it. When I came in the company as a CEO in 2017, we were known at the time as outsourcing company, competent one, doing work in engineering, in QA, a little bit of co-development. We even started, our own studio on the side, but we had some frustrated efforts to make some games. They were not commercially successful. It was an interesting setup, but we were not at that time anything other than an outsourcing company as far as the industry is concerned. What I saw in 2017 is the opportunity for us to become a creative agency. And what that meant is that we would dial up our investment into product development, being able to build high quality games from the ground up. And we have effectively been on that path for the past 4 years. It's been quite a journey. I'll give you some stats so you can understand the extent of the transformation that we've gone through. If 2017 we had, almost a studio, I would say, at the time. The reason I say almost is because we had many gaps. We had many leadership gaps. You were there with us, kind of helping us through the transformation.
Yeah, are you kidding me? We were making a studio as we were making games. That was the most interesting year of my life because we were pitching. So number one, we had 3 guys in studio. We had one designer. Shout out to my brother Raul. We had 2 amazing graphic artists, Xenia Pamphil, shout out to my sister Xenia Pamphil, and Cristian Popa, shout out to Cristian Popa. And we were trying to make games. We were kind of trying to figure out how the fuck do we make games if we don't have a programmer? Because everyone was making money. We were the guys. So
yes,
I joined in order to start the product development branch of this. And we kind of did it. We did the first games in a row, but that was probably professionally, my most strenuous adventure, because we were trying to figure out how to make the team work. We were trying to figure out what game we're making. We were trying to figure out what talent to bring in. And we were also trying to have fun with it, which we did. That was also one of the most fun periods of my life. But truth be told, that's not how you start the company for the long term, right? So kind of going back to what you're saying, what you came in with a long-term vision, because something caught my attention when you were talking about how the path is not always a straight line, it's sinuous. I really like the Tarzan approach. Do you know what the Tarzan approach is?
No.
So here's how it goes. You set a goal. So Tarzan, you are Tarzan, and you start from a tree, right? Then you have your goal over here. Make a great company, or make a great, like my goal was a great game development studio. So you never go on a straight line. You catch the first rope, and you go this way. You go left. You write, oh, okay, so I did accomplish something, but then you swing back and then you get another rope. And then you swing again, and then you swing again, and you keep swinging until you actually hit your goal. And if you hang on for dear life as you're doing this, and you lose hope along the way, then eventually you're gonna hit your goal. Because here we are, big company, what, 700 people, 800
Yeah, I
people?
mean, look again, stats, right?
Yeah,
It's
stats. Let's talk
it's
about
kind of
stats.
amazing to look at what has happened over the past years. So 2017, we ended the year with 5 million in revenue. We ended.
That's
Uh,
how I got my first car. No, I'm kidding. I don't have a car.
no, you didn't, because we lost 1.5 million this year. Not only you didn't get a car, you had to sell it so we can pay our bills. No, we didn't have to do that. Just saying. No, 2017 was an inflection point for us. I mean, first of all, there's tremendous pain to building a product development organization within the confines of an outsourcing outfit. It's much harder than building from the ground up. And you have to kind of create a mindset that is not necessarily an easy thing to do when you have people that are usually are used to follow basically work on spec. And as
Mm-hmm.
you know, in many of the multinational or large multinational studios that we have in Bucharest, that's mostly the type of work that you do. You follow a spec that is passed on to Romanian operations by some headquarter person in Paris or Montreal or Vancouver or Redwood Shores here in the Bay Area, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so you don't even necessarily have an abundance of talent in the market that you can build original games with. So it's tough. It's tough, but we went from Annus Horribilis 2017, at that moment of inflection when we were effectively hit with a bunch of, let's say, near catastrophic events. We had the misfortune of one of our main clients shifting away their business from product development into licensing. We had uh, the disadvantage of having to support the development of an original IP, because we were trying to prove the industry that they can take us seriously as game developers. So that meant making our own game,
Mm-hmm.
and we budgeted 500,000. It turned out to cost 1.5 million.
Yeah.
First of all, we budgeted wrong because we didn't know how to budget, product development properly at the time. But also we made mistakes, right? So we had
You know
to.
what they say. You know what they say, that the risk was calculated. Like this is, I really like this expression. The risk was calculated, but boy, am I bad at math. That's kind
Yeah.
of the story of Rumble, right?
Oh yes, and boy, I am bad at math for sure. I never really liked it, but humanities is where I find myself. That's why I'm like quoting literature and Plato, like in the course of casual conversation. Uh, but look, it was an extremely instructive experience. First of all, it was hard for the executive team. It was heart wrenching, and it kind of made us be who we are today, made us more resilient, made us smarter about business, and ultimately showed us that if we pull together, we can win. So again, 5 million in revenue, about 220 people in 2017, and losing money in a kind of dramatic fashion. Like I was looking at the bank account, we were like going down $100,000 every month. And we know there were some months where we paid the everyone's salaries from the overdraft. But then we recovered. It turned out to have been a bold but ultimately smart move. And with the benefit of hindsight, you can say, yeah, it was all calculated.
No, it
Trying to
wasn't.
make make well of a pretty impossible situation, and we tried to make sure that we don't give up our dream. And our dream was to build Rumble Heroes, which is our first true free-to-play game with a complex backend. It was a real-time multiplayer experience with 3D graphics. And we effectively, and Clash Royale monetization design. We basically piled all the risks that we possibly could into one product, and then we said, we're gonna do this. And of course, we found it extremely challenging to get it done. But fast forward, right? 4 years, 2021. We ended 2020 with 21 million in revenue, just about. We are 15% profitable, about 2.5 million profit in the year. We are 650 people. You said 700, and probably by the end of the month we will be somewhere closer to that number. And hiring fast. We have first world problems where we have a lot more demand than we have capacity. Whereas in 2017, I have to tell you, like half of our crew didn't have work because one of our biggest accounts just dried up. Went from $300,000 a month to effectively zero within the space of 6 months. That is really scary stuff, and we didn't know how to do business development at the time, and basically all the work that we had done historically had been word of mouth. So but again, I do see this as an evolution. Where you see pivots for us, it's just a means for us to change certain aspects of how we draft our strategy in order to reach our ultimate objective. And our ultimate objective has always been to build a great development organization that can create beautiful work. It's kind of a diffused goal. So we actually spent a lot of time in the last year and a half trying to figure out more specifically who we are, what we want to put into the world, and how does the city of Amber look like, both in terms of a business objective, what is our vision, right, for our business, but also what are our values, like what do we believe in, how do we want to grow this company in a way that feels like nurturing environments for our people and a positive presence in society. So I think we have those answers now. It's not a pivot. It's just like, okay, finally understanding through the fog of war who we want to be in this new chapter in Amber's history.
I call it a pivot because it's a shift in the way we think, and it's a shift in, and you're right, we're probably going towards the same direction, but all of a sudden it's a lot clearer, right? So right now we can see the North Star. So let's talk about that. So I really, really like the way you're positioning this. So let's talk about the North Star of Amber. What's going on? There's bragging time. We have studios in Botoshen. We have studios in Guadalajara. I love Guadalajara. I feel it's like Romania. It's just that people are speaking Spanish, but they're just beautiful people. We have a studio in Montreal. We've got California, Los Angeles, and San Francisco. Obviously, we're a place that everyone is leaving, but let's not get into that. And right, all of these are incremental steps towards one massive goal, which is put someone on the moon. No, I'm kidding. Let's kind of go into that.
Well, actually, you're not wrong. It is a moonshot. Reaching the city of Amber will require a moonshot because our vision, our business vision for the company is exceptionally ambitious. And, I personally think that only ambitious goals are worth pursuing because, YOLO.
Amen to that. YOLO, right? Yeah, I know. But look, hard things make us better people.
Yeah, and the hard things are fun to deconstruct and solve as well. I mean, it gives us like a really big hole to chew on. And that's why we defined our vision on a 10-year timeline. The way we express our vision is that to say that within a decade, we aim to establish a leading position in every segment of the game development supply chain. So let me unpack this for you for a second. What does
Mm.
it mean? So first of all, time bound, right? Within a decade, this is our horizon. We will take a decade to reach City of Amber. If you're wondering what that was inspired by, it was inspired by JFK's moonshot. You know, he
Oh
said we're
wow.
doing these things not because they're easy, but because they're hard. You know, so like, oh my God, because we have this amazing challenge that is mobilizing us to pursue that path. And
Hmm.
a leading position means that we are recognized in the industry as one of the best purveyors of service or of product development in that particular segment. You know, and the segment can be, let's say, QA or customer support or localization or a la carte engineering or art or design services. But it also means the best purveyor of product development in a genre platform combination, like say mobile casual puzzle games or mobile mid-core action games. We want to build this stable of studios, this network of studios that would be effectively best in class at a particular type of development.
So
So
you're saying that you're not doing this to get a fast car, and so
no,
you don't want a Lamborghini.
no, well, I don't even like the Lamborghinis to be honest. So it's not a good example anyway. But I think, and it's not just me because it doesn't matter really what I want. What matters is what the people at Amber want. I work for Amber just
Hmm.
like anyone else. I'm in service
How
of
does
this.
that work? You're the CEO. Like people, they are what?
Well,
Explain that a
like
bit.
Ali, the best way I can explain this is to tell you, something that was very inspiring to me is when Ilkka Paninen from Supercell came through and said, I'm the CEO with the least power. I have less power than anyone in the company because I only lead through influence, and I just try to be in service of the people. It's this notion of servant leadership. You're here to be a facilitator, an enabler, a coach, a mentor to the teams that you are in charge of. So, it's like
Hmm.
you're inverting the pyramid. You are at the bottom of the pyramid
Hmm.
working for the benefit of the Commonwealth. So that's how I think this is best suited for game development because ultimately the magic is created by the people that deliver the game, the people that code, that draw, that design, that imagine, that dream. They are the ones that are creating the value. Everything else is a support function. Even you, Gabi, you're executive producer in charge of one of our most successful studios, Avalon. You are serving your team. You're just helping them, coordinate better, plan better, help each other. You're making sure that they have the skills they need in order to succeed. And then it's like, go and, perform and excel. And we're here for you. How can we help you? Is
Hmm.
it a back massage? Can we bring you coffee? But I mean, literally, we
Especially the
are
back
servants.
massages.
Yeah.
Especially that. Yeah, you're right. This is how I usually answer the question of who are you, what do you do, and I usually say, well, I'm Gabriel, and I make sure that these guys have everything they need to make in order to make great games. And I'm pretty sure most, if not all, of the acting leadership in Amber introduces themselves kind of in the same manner. So yes, great people, great teams make great games. This is something that everyone should remember. And one of the things that I'm really enjoying in Amber is that we are creating these verticals, right? So kind of going back to the strategy and going back to what we're discussing earlier on, we're creating verticals, which is essentially studios that are specialized into making a certain type of game over and over and over. So a certain genre, if you will,
Mhm.
over and over until they become number one. That is, did I describe this correctly? Is this how you would sum up the strategy in like really the game development strategy of Amber in like a few words? Because it kind of makes sense, right? You have to do it over and over and over and over until you get it right.
Yeah, we believe in this idea of mastery.
Mm.
And It's one of the reasons that we never raised investment from venture capital. It is something that we have pondered. Obviously, myself being in San Francisco. By the way, we need to get back to the topic of why people leaving San Francisco. It's super interesting, and we need to educate everyone about the game stunk. Okay,
Oh yeah, oh yeah. Let's do that.
but we'll get to that. The idea that we had um, with with our network of studios is that if we allow these studios to specialize in
Mm.
time, they will become masters at their craft. And the only way you can achieve mastery by perfecting your craft year after year is to focus on something that is to a problem that is reductible, and effectively focusing on team on a particular on a genre platform combination allows them to perfect their engines, their knowledge of design, to acquire talent that is perfectly fit for that type of game. And just like the katana masters, sword masters of yore, every year if you work at producing flawless katanas, eventually you will sublimate the art and do create masterpieces. In the same way that if you are a violin maker and every year you dedicate yourself to the craft and you try to improve what you're doing, and have this kind of innate focus on mastery, you will get best in class. And we were inspired by this, by the story of Pixar, which is not the story of a company in the games industry, but otherwise it's a creative enterprise just like us. And as you know, Pixar has been in the wilderness for 9 years before they created Toy Story. They effectively were one step removed from bankruptcy, and the only reason they've endured is because of the vision and the deep pockets of Steve Jobs. Even he was kind of fed up with it. If you read the Creativity Inc. by Ed Catmull, you'll find that it was a really tough time for them, but they persisted and they worked at their craft, they worked at their technology, and eventually they produced their first commercial success. And the rest is history, as they say. This is a company that has produced like tens of seminal works in the field of animation, and billions upon billions of dollars in revenue. And so we were looking at that timeline and realizing that if you're coming from an emerging market, where the talent is not necessarily fine-tuned for the kind of masterful game development that we wanted to do, it will take us quite a bit of time to build into success. And we have to be very patient. And the type of patience is not necessarily an ingrained feature of the capital markets.
Mm.
I think even the most, let's say, laissez-faire venture capitalists are looking at, maximal time horizon of 7 years for their funds. Now, if you come in anywhere in between that, it may be, 3, 4, 5 years until you start to feel the pressure to exit. And in the meanwhile, the focus will not necessarily being on learning through failure. The focus will be on maximizing revenue at any cost. And a venture capitalist coming in may very well say, I admire what you're trying to do with product development, but I would rather put those engineers to work building tools or co-developing with large publishers, because that is comes in with guaranteed profit, and that will make your financials look better, which will prepare you better for an exit.
Mm.
Now, I don't want to imply that the venture capitalists don't fund innovation. They absolutely do. But think of our context. We were effectively an outsourcing company that achieved a modicum of success outsourcing services.
Mm-hmm.
For them to invest money in building effectively a decade-long strategy of perfecting studio structures would have been quite a hard sell to venture capitalists. So what we did instead is we scaled our service division in order to produce sufficient funding to fuel our expansion of studios. And today we have 4 fully owned studios. We have Avalon, and we talked about that you are working with, and We have Lorraine, which is a mobile mid-core specialized studio also in Bucharest. We have Scorpius, which is our HD studio, so specializing in PC console development. Currently working on an original IP that we're investing in. We're basically replicating our Rumble Heroes experience, but now in a new space, so PC console games. And we have Cara Oculta, our newest studio in Guadalajara.
Hola, cara oculta.
Hola, Guadalajara. Hola, los amigos mexicanos. And yes, I have to tell you that countless times it has come out like how close we feel to our Mexican friends. It's incredible that we have such similar characteristics as nations. You know, there are some differences. For example, Mexicans are far more indulgent than we are. They're far more likely to start dancing and having a good time. We're like a little bit more serious, more reserved than they are in that
But
sense.
that's beautiful.
It's
That's absolutely
absolutely
beautiful. That's
But,
such a manifestation of humanity, right?
but you know, there have been anthropologists that have actually compared different nations around the world in terms of their psychological characteristics. And if you look at Mexico and Romania, it's like a mirror image, except that the indulgent aspect, which we obviously, us Romanian, have to work at, because I think Mexico's got it right.
You know what? I'm super happy to do that. I'm having beer. I'm smoking cigarettes. This is I'm starting to understand this indulging part. But let me see if I understood this correctly. So the strategy, I'm gonna try to formulate it very simple. The strategy for Amber is to make money through a network of studios, money that gets then invested, funneled into developing teams in order to create an amazing original product, original game development products. Did I sum this right? Did I sum this up correctly?
Absolutely. This is absolutely, it is indeed one of the central pillars of our strategy, but it's not the only one. And we have 5 pillars to our strategy.
Let's go through the 5 pillars of strategy. Okay. All right. Children, take notes.
Yes. Again, this is the way we are. These are the instructions. This is the chart that we use in order to walk on our journey to the city of Amber, right? And again, to offer a parallel here, think of this path as the yellow brick road that leads to Oz. Okay, this is the closest literary approximation that I can find to describe what we're looking at. And yes, the strategy is the chart. 5 components to the strategy. The first one you already mentioned, the network of studios. Effectively, we want to build a stable of studios around the world that highly specialize. I won't insist too much on it. It's like fairly straightforward. And you know, we mentioned that we have 4 fully owned studios. We're also collaborating with studios that are outside of Amber. You know, we're building what we call a network of partner studios. Some of these we could merge with or acquire down the road. We also are going to build new locations. This is something that we are, you know, excited to pursue. We have opened 2 new locations. Guadalajara, which has seen massive expansion during the pandemic. We have 140 people there. We have 14 people in Montreal, you know, another location that we announced in November, where we had been building it, so to speak, for the past year before we announced it. And now we're looking at, you know, other areas in Eastern Europe. You know, we're conducting due diligence on multiple locations. We're looking really seriously at Southeast Asia. And we definitely want to have Asia presence and tap in those markets and know-how. And I think it's super exciting, and there's a lot to learn from Asia. And you know, so our destiny is to be a global game development agency. In other words,
Asia is a different planet. those guys. So I spent 1 month in Saigon when I was working with Gameloft. I had an amazing team over there. Those guys are just different in so many ways, and they're so varied, and they're so, man, it's another world. Um,
Isn't that
so
cool? That's all.
that's amazing. This is what life should be all about: discovering new things, doing drugs, and mastering something. Mastering, like, this is important, right? You were talking earlier on about mastery, about repeating iteration until you get something beautiful. But
Absolutely.
let's keep going. Let's keep going on the strategy. I really like where this is going. I kind of like the way your brain works, Mihai Pohontu.
Thank you.
So
I like how your brain works too. We need
so
definitely need to perfect our art of indulgence, as you have just mentioned.
yes, yes,
Discover far-flung places, build beautiful things, and indulge while you're doing
with drugs.
it.
But we'll we'll get to that as well. You're not creating. So essentially, we're not creating a company. We're creating an ecosystem. I think this is important, right? Because there's not just Amber in this. There's Pattern, and we should talk a bit about that
Cool.
because that's another manifestation of beauty. There's Carbon. So let's talk a bit about that. How do these things, because this is part of the pillars that you were talking earlier on.
Absolutely. So we talked about network of studio. That's one
Yeah,
pillar.
yeah.
There's the I need to add one thing. It's very important. We use original IP to open new markets, right? So we will
Mm,
continue to develop our own games. Super excited about the game that we're developing currently in Scorpius, and there will be many others, right? Because that's a way for us to prove to the industry that we have built the skills necessary to tackle a particular kind of development. Plus, we are a creative agency. We need to like unleash our creativity in ways that will fuel our growth, but and also satisfy our yearning, right, for building beautiful things. What you mentioned is in another pillar called creative ecosystem. So
mm,
we see Amber at the center of a series of concentric circles, right? You first have Amber as a family for its staff, right? The collective. And then right outside of that, you will find companies that through cross shareholding or a well-established business partnership are very close to Amber. And we're constantly exchanging projects and knowledge and, sometimes even talent between them. So the companies that are currently in this inner circle within our ecosystem are Pattern. Pattern is a design agency based in Bucharest. They help Amber with all sorts of marketing material and website development and um,
makers of this podcast. Thank you,
supporters. And,
Pattern.
yes, supporters of this podcast and pretty much anything else that we do, publicly, like events. And they really they're targeting the advertising sector, so our Amber is just one of their clients, but through cross shareholding they stay very close to us, and we kind of filter all of that marketing. uh, all those marketing needs are serviced effectively by Pattern. We have Carbon, and Carbon has been our incubator and accelerator. We try to operate Carbon as a business,
Mhm.
and we found that it's a really tough business to yoke a profit, especially if you run it the way we want to run it, which is
Mm,
Carbon is really meant to support the indie game dev community in the areas around the world where we have a presence, but is specifically geared at helping developers in emerging markets because we see the need there. So we want to offer them all the services of Amber, from QA to engineering to design to you name it. Like we are effectively going to provide services and act as consultants. And also, once the product is delivered, right, we want to take it to publishers around the world. So to use our business development expertise to help these developers who are often clueless about the
mm,
business aspects, and even when they understand the business aspects, they don't have the network, they don't have the contacts, they don't know who to talk to. They may go to conferences and find it really hard to get a meeting. I mean, that's, just the reality. And it's especially hard now in the pandemic, right? It's super hard to get the attention of people. So we can help them with the business development aspect. We can help them to build their games. And, our model in Carbon in the past has been to take a small portion of the revenue of their product, not even equity in the studio. Now, the way we're thinking of Carbon in the future, and by the way, it has had some success. Metagame is an example of that. We have supported Metagame's first game, and they, as you know, they were right next to Avalon. They were kind of like in our building, in our office,
And they're killing it right now. Those guys are awesome.
Great. And I'm so proud of that. I just want to do more of that at scale, and I wanted to do it in Mexico and many other locations. So, but our realization, going through that experience, we have supported 6 different indie games with that format, and you can find them on the website if you're interested. What we found is that if we are to stay close to the original impetus for why we created Carbon, we should run it as a non-profit. It should really be a facility to the game dev ecosystem in each of these emerging
So I was gonna ask this: why? It's not like it's making like Catalin, my brother, I love you, but it's not like it's making a shit ton of money. Carbon's not making a shit ton of money.
No.
So why? Why do it?
Because community is one of our fundamental values. From inception, we started with 3 values. We could talk about this at length, but we started with 3 values: people first, flat structure, and civic spirit. And now it has morphed. We are a much more complex organization, so we had to scale our system of values. We have 7. We can talk to them in due time. But one thing that has endured and has been always exemplified very well in Amber from inception all the way to present days is this idea of civic spirit, which we have morphed as valuing the idea of a community. We are here for a purpose, and our purpose is not to make money. I mean, of course, we are going to make money if we do beautiful things that people appreciate, but our purpose is to fuel this community that is formed around us, and to act as a central focal point, and to effectively fulfill the destiny of independent game developers in every market where we have a presence. We are very inspired by that. So because it has been a fundamental aspect from the past, we don't mind putting our profit towards that goal. Yet another reason why we don't have those classic venture capitalist investors on our board or in our shareholding group, because they may have a real issue with that, because we are effectively giving away an important part of our profit to these idealistic causes. But for us, it's like central to who we are. So it'll be like super strange to like try to convince them that it's a good idea, because yeah, I mean, you're right. It's not easy to justify it on purely capitalistic terms. However, I'll tell you this. It's not just the goodwill that this generates, but if you have a strong games industry with many different studios that achieve commercial success on the global scale, man, that's good for Amber too. Because, there's like talent that gets trained, there are studios that you can merge with, later down the road. It's a healthier ecosystem overall, because a lot of more people are investing in talent than just Amber does. So I think it's the tide that lifts all boats in a weird way that is particularly relevant in emerging markets, I have to say. You are the beneficiary of the success of the entire industry in those locations, being such a large company, right, in relative terms. I believe today, well, I know for a fact that today we are the largest indie game developer in Romania. I dare say that we probably are the largest in Mexico as well, but I need to check my numbers. I'm pretty sure that we're on the way, if not already there. And also, if we're talking about the inner circle of the ecosystem, we have Arden. Arden is the newest entity that we have established. We are establishing in Bucharest, in Mexico, and in the US. And Arden is our non-profit vehicle because we don't want to only do things that cater to the indie game dev community. We want to benefit society at large. And one way we want to do that is to use our skill as game maker to deliver positive impact in the life of the communities that we're part of. And you'll wonder, like, how does that look like? Well, for example, we are arranging for some projection mapping experiences in communities that were blighted by the pandemic in order to make it exciting to go back there again. And it kind of, hopefully we will be out of the pandemic by the summer, but it gives people a reason to return to the neighborhood and hopefully, begin the revitalization of those spaces. There's Amber Academy. Amber Academy is what I like to think is one of the most extensive educational curriculums that are deployed by a games company of our size and scale. And it has an external component, meaning that we offer it to high school students and university students. Again, we don't see a practical direct benefit from that. Yes, maybe at some point down the road, these people will come and be interns or junior.
But that's happening.
It's
Did I tell you the story? Did I tell you the story of Sonia? Did we ever discuss that? So number one, I want to say I really like how your kindness is tactical kindness, right? So you're thinking in the long term, and you're saying money is a byproduct, which is true. Money is a byproduct of taking risks, of mastery, of putting in the hard work. Just do that, follow your path, kind of like we were discussing Tarzan earlier on, and money's going to show up.
Swing left, swing right, and you'll get to the destination eventually.
Eventually, right? And it's kind of hard to see in the big scheme of things. It's kind of hard to see because it kind of goes into the details. But here's a story. Here's a success story of not Amber, but of a girl that I very much admire. Back, I think 3 years ago, we were doing these workshops with high school students from Bucharest, and we were inviting them over to our studio, and we were kind of telling them, here's how the game industry works, and here's some very basic design, and here's how design kind of lays the foundation. Here's how you're going to create design vision for your game. We had Aurelian and Solo, right? Very talented designers. Do this to them. And at some point, we had the guys from a local high school called Mihai Viteazu. And this very, very talented young lady was asked at the end, so how do I get a job? Like, come on, kid, you're not going to get a job. You're, 10th grade. Her name is Sonia. She since then attended all the workshops. She attended all the game jams. She visited Amber during the summer. She spent time with our designers. And now she has a job as a game designer in Amber. So not only, hey Sonia, congrats, you're amazing. I'm sure there's a ton of other success stories like these that are gonna follow. Essentially, maybe I don't even know. I mean, I'm hoping that there's people that attended those workshops that we were doing and just started their own thing. I hope they started their own company. I hope they're making games, so it works.
I think so too. I mean, some people may consider us idealistic, but I do think that all the good that you put into the world, really comes back to you. Karma is a really powerful thing. So yes, there will be some ancillary benefit from our actions. Even if we undertake them because we simply want to do good, and the impetus for Amber Academy, the external component, was really to kind of show young people that they can build the career in unexpected ways, because that has been my experience. I loved games growing up and I played games like a maniac. But I never thought that I could build a career in games until I, accidentally, by virtue of being in the US, I found a job on Monster, which is like a job board.
What's Monster? Oh, okay.
Yeah, back in the day it was a job board. Maybe they're still around. I don't know. and it was a job for a game guru, which turned out to be a QA tester. But I read the job description and I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe it. Playing games. And as it turned out, that job announcement was for Activision to hire testers for the game Civilization Call to Power, which is a clone of the.
What is that? How you started?
And that's how I
Wow.
started. Can you believe it? I go into an interview and they asked me to speak about my favorite game in the world, the one that I played obsessively for hundreds of hours. And frankly, I knew more about Civilization than they did. You know, my English sucked at the time, but you know, I definitely impressed with the knowledge of the algorithms. And so look, I wanted people to know that they can build an amazing career in the creative field and you know make good money and have and build beautiful things. And there
Hmm.
was Amber Academy. As it happens, some of these people are really inspired and they will want to come back to us and become interns and juniors and build their careers on. And I have to tell you, if you look at the educational curriculum that we are establishing at Amber, Amber will be a very nurturing place for people to achieve just that. And not only in Romania, I want to be very clear. We're doing the same thing in Mexico, and we're going to do the same thing in every location around the world where we have a significant development presence. So that's the creative ecosystem. I think,
Hmm.
you know, we started with Networker Studio, network creative ecosystem. Let me move on to the studio mastery aspect because
Yes,
that's
let's do that.
a pillar. That's a strategic pillar as well, and it's connected with the network of studios indelibly. The way we define studio mastery um, is that we want our studios to produce beautiful work that sells, right? I mean, we are still a commercial enterprise, right?
This is
So
important. Beautiful work that sells, right? It's not only if it's not only an art form. It's not only about making money. It's an art form that makes money. This is
yeah,
important.
yes, I mean, we are entertainers. We are
Yes.
not, I mean, yes, there's a lot of art involved with what we do, and we are artists, but we are commercial artists first and foremost. We build beautiful things that people uh, endorse through the hard-earned cash. So, you know,
Hmm.
for us, a significant objective is that to build studios that have the capacity to create $100 million games in revenue, lifetime revenue, repeatedly, right?
Hmm.
And so that's how we define the goal. Also, we are building Amber in a way that allows us to have highly distributed teams. You know, we talked about our studios and you know, Lorraine based in Bucharest, Avalon based in Bucharest, Caraculta based in Guadalajara. But that's not really telling the true picture. I mean, I will give the example of Avalon. Avalon is a studio based in Bucharest that has the advantage of a very senior game director that is in Los Angeles, who is also doing a truckload of art in Guadalajara, you know,
Hmm.
and this is the model that is emerging within Amber. What is making that possible, though, is making a very strong and common culture that translates into operational principles that are shared by all. That means that we all speak the same language. You know, we all use look at the root of the grass. I don't know if that's the right expression to use, but where the rubber meets the road, you know, there's
Hmm.
a common game development framework. There's a common reporting system. There's a common set of KPIs to measure success. There's a common way to do planning. All of these things are not accidents. And by the way, in order for them to be sustainably deployed across the entire organization, it has to start with that core philosophy. And we want to do that in a respectful way, which is not to impose it by force. I don't think culture can be imposed. You can only influence culture through your actions, what you do
Hmm.
on a day-by-day basis. And you know, if you want to have a humanist orientation in your company, then you better be people first in your thinking and make the appropriate decisions and sometimes make the painful decisions that come with that. And you know, it's not easy.
It's not easy. It's not easy. But here's the beautiful thing. It's such a spiritual journey because you were mentioning Avalon earlier on. You were saying team in Bucharest, game director in Los Angeles. Hell, and then our brothers in Mexico making art. And it's such a rewarding way of doing things because you get to interact with so many brains and so many people and so much emotion. And that can only make things better. So, kind of speaking of mastery, mastery not only comes from repetition, but mastery also comes from variety. You cannot only, like, as a katana is gonna cut a lot through a lot of things, but you have to take it through those things in order to cut better, and it's rewarding. And thank God we're in the 21st century and we can do this, because back when I started as a game tester in this industry, and here's why I started because Eugen Baicha, my friend, got a job at Ubisoft, and I couldn't believe, like, what do you mean you're getting paid to make games? Like, back then we only had Ubisoft and Gameloft in Bucharest. And I remember, oh, and speaking of spiritual journey, I remember walking in my first day at my job as a game tester in Gameloft. Back then, Gameloft was seated in the same kind of open space with Ubisoft. And I had been trying to figure out what I want to do with my life. I had no clue. I was studying philosophy, but then I also thought I wanted to go into arts. I was kind of a mess, but I was following concept art, and I knew this guy that was doing. They had done 1,000 portraits in 1,000 days. And as I'm walking into the through the door, I look on my left. There's a guy drawing a portrait of himself, and I'm like, "What the fuck is that, Andrew Jones? That's like my idol." I'm trying to learn how to draw, and I did that following Andrew Jones's work on concept art. And oh my god, he is in the same building that I am. I wanted to go and ask him, like, "Can I touch you?" So that's when no.
Too bad.
Yeah, but that kind of speaks to how diverse this job is, like how diverse this industry that we're in is, right? It's beautiful. It's such a thing of beauty. You described it. How did you describe it back in the day? So you described it, Amber, as a manifestation of, like, help me out here.
Well, I was kind of put on the spot by the management team at Amber to unveil my hidden inner motivation for starting Amber. And I told them that for me, Amber is a manifestation of my love for the world. That this is my gift back to the world, and it's a sort of a gesture of gratitude, almost like is how I say thank you for the amazing reality that we live in. And I feel like really shy to share this because it's a very inner motivation for me. Thank you, Gabi. You definitely have inside tracks here.
Putting you on the spot, AmberCast, putting you on the spot.
Yes.
Let's go back, but kind of let's go back to, I think, the final pillar of the strategy, which is learning organization. Let's talk about that, because you were mentioning Amber Academy earlier on. That's important. It kind of goes hand in hand with mastery, and it kind of goes hand in hand with humanistic values. Learning is important. That's the only way you can develop, right?
Yes. And we've already talked a little bit about learning, so in the context of Amber Academy, it all makes sense. There are many things that we still need to do that are on the horizon. We want to create certificate programs because, frankly, you shouldn't have to go to a 4-year university and learn something that you probably are never going to use again, and then come and work for Amber and then relearn everything from the ground up. Maybe you just attend a certificate course and you get certified to be a designer, and then you can circumvent that process. Not that we don't like university education. I think that's amazing. And I think you should study what you are passionate about, not necessarily what you are going to work in. You studied philosophy. I studied political science with emphasis on international relations. And I'm really glad that I did. And to this day, I read books and magazines on the topic. I'm still super interested in foreign affairs and the politics. I mean, who isn't? But let's say I approach it more with a scientific eye because of my prior education. I think it has enriched my life. It has, and like you, it has structured who we are and how we see, how we interpret our reality. And that's a major benefit of a 4-year education. But since we're talking about education, on the far horizon, meaning that it's something that we haven't even started on currently. The certificate program seems like something that will come fairly soon, but what is on a farther horizon than that is this idea of a digital arts university. And as you know, this is sorely needed in Bucharest, because almost everyone that has learned that skill has either been self-taught, or they've learned it at some type of large corporation, or perhaps, and those are very few numbered, some technical training course that they've taken out of their own volition. And having established coursework in digital arts across many different domains, like game development for engineers, and game design, and art for games, technical art, for example. These are things that are, in order to achieve mastery, takes lengthy and study in order to be competitive at a global level. And frankly, those type of institutions already exist. They exist in Montreal, they exist in San Francisco, they exist in Los Angeles, and we don't have the advantage of that in Bucharest. We certainly don't have that in other emerging markets around the world where Amber will have a presence. So, we would like to establish that. But Gabi, there's one more element of the strategy. There are 5 in total. And the last element is the innovation frameworks, because we believe, and this is very important, we believe that Amber's key competitive differentiator is in innovation. And I'll tell you how we arrived at this conclusion, because for a company that used to be an outsourcing services company, it's not a common thing to hear about. There's business management theory that say that in order to achieve success, businesses can specialize in 3 major domains. They can seek to achieve the lowest cost possible, so optimize for cost. They can become a niche player, or they can focus on innovation. And so, look, for us, for Amber, focusing on low cost has never been a viable strategy. Why? Well, Bucharest, where we were founded, is actually pretty expensive compared to other areas around the world. Ukraine is much cheaper. They're like, next door.
But
Russia,
they have Russia next to them. Good luck with that.
I know they're not part of NATO, but
Yeah.
honestly, I hope that all the good things that happen to us will eventually happen to them as well. So,
Yes.
and as soon as possible. But because we're talking about Russia, Russia itself is a hotbed of game development, and they're even cheaper than Ukraine. But looking further east, I mean, can we compete with India in terms of cost? No, they're like fifth of the cost of Bucharest. And then Southeast Asia, right? I mean, again, same situation. We were never able to compete on cost. And what we can hope to offer is like reasonable cost for a high quality service. But that means that effectively optimizing for cost was not really the path that we even built the company, because we wanted the best talent, not the least expensive talent. You have to pay fair salaries if you take that perspective. Okay, so that path is not available to us. Niche player. Well, Gabi, you know very well that Amber is not a niche.
Tried that. Yeah, we kind of tried that.
And this is, again, I mean, I like complexity. I think it's really exciting to do many different things at once. And like you, for example, you're in a vidcast interviewing me and like typing some messages to your friends. It's cool, man. This is how we do it. We're like, we live in the 21st century. So I am very yes.
No, I was just gonna say that I'm talking to my guardian angel. Uh, so,
It's good to have on.
but yes, let's talk about niche players, because we tried doing that, right? So we did Link Twin, and I was so in love with that game. That was I picked it up from Francis. So Francis, you made a beautiful game, and we piled so many things into that game. We wanted to make a free to play puzzle game that also had a artistic component to it, that was also conveying a message. It was exploring something that at the time was very dear to me. Well, not very dear, but I was kind of experiencing it. I was understanding the stages of grief, so we were like, oh, let's make a game about that. Let's put that on top of it. And it was a niche game, beautiful game, but it's not really a game that Amber would make well, or it's not the game that Amber would make, right? Because
Gabi,
yes, we're not niche players.
well, wait. The concept of a niche business, it
Mm,
doesn't, I mean, it's different than the concept of a niche game. I actually think that we might make a niche game in the future if it turns out that it caters to a segment of the market that is very rich, very attractive to us, where we don't have a presence. Now, realistically speaking, there are not that many niche games that cater to something like that. But for example, if we're looking at the amazing success of battle royale first-person shooters, you can sort of think of that as a niche, right? And we will make maybe original games in that area. But the concept of a niche business, Gabi, it refers to something else. It refers that you only specialize in one thing. You as a business, you only do one thing, like let's say motion capture, and you
right.
focus on building the best motion capture studio in the world. Or maybe you do customer support, and then you do customer support, by the way, not for any industry, but for one industry, and you do it extremely well. And in that sense, Amber could not have been a niche business because we already are highly diversified across many different kinds of work. And even our network of studios, even though individually they can be a niche studio,
Mm,
in practice, when you're looking at the whole of Amber, we are all over the place. Like we are striding across all manner and genre of mobile game development, and now we want to do PC and console, and then we'll do XR in the future, and God knows whatever is next, Eurogaming. We're gonna get into that, absolutely. So niche, not us. Low cost, not us. What is left? Innovation. We have to
mm.
max out our ability to innovate in order to build a successful scaled up business. So that's where that strategy pillar came about. And I'm happy to tell you, it's not. I mean, it's exciting to have that clarity. There was a lot of internal discussion to arrive at this, and this is where we're going to focus in the next period of time. We are going to set ourselves up as a consultancy for our partners, swimming upstreams, providing value beyond what they're asking us to do. We are going to also create a space for creativity in our company by chasing, first of all, contracts that allow us to be creative.
Mm.
A lot of the full game development allows quite a great deal of creativity, but within that, there are partners who are more likely to ask you to deliver on spec, and then partners that will say, what do you think? What are you proposing? We want more of those, obviously. And in beyond that, is about investing in our own internal projects, whether there are technologies or standalone products that can bring to the table an element of innovation, that break boundaries. We call that breakthrough innovation projects. And last but not least, for us to be innovative, it means that innovation has to be a daily activity that happens across the entire company. And for us, the practical expression of that is Kaizen, it's continuous improvement.
Hmm. What is Kaizen? The fuck is Kaizen?
Kaizen is a Japanese term, comes from lean management methodology. It was coined at Toyota. Um, the simplest form that I can describe it is continuous improvement, meaning that every day you come to work, you're trying to figure out ways to do your job better, more efficiently, more to have better outcomes. And you may wonder, like, how does this apply to a creative enterprise like Amber? Because obviously Toyota is a manufacturing powerhouse.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there are many aspects of game development, as you know, that are more mechanical and process oriented. And those are particularly well suited to incremental innovation through process improvement.
Can you define incremental innovation? I like how you're very systematic in your approach. So let's talk a bit about systemic creativity, because let's tell everyone how, number one, it's super difficult to create original IP. It's difficult as fuck, right? Because you don't know where you're going, you don't know what you want to make. Everyone has an opinion about what you should build. So you need some way of systemizing this. And you're the first man, like you are the guy who brought in, at least for me and the team that I was managing back in the day, you brought in the concept of design thinking. And design thinking basically says go through a lot of iteration, understand what the problem is, what the problem you're trying to solve is, understand it, then put it in one simple question, and then start exploring and then come up with a vision. And that's just one of the ways that you're approaching this systematically. But you're approaching it systematically, you're approaching innovation systematically at a higher level. Let's talk a bit about that.
Unpacking creativity and how to create an environment that enhances the opportunity that is embedded in innovative behavior. We had to study this. It was, how do you make innovation a central tenet of your organization? I think, I personally believe, like we have sort of a systematic form that I have shared with you, right? We talked about incremental improvement, which, by the way, finds practical expression in things like figuring out how to do more with less, right? That's, how to achieve the same result by automating tasks. Like, the games industry is exceptionally ripe for automation in many of its aspects. We're talking about quality engineering invested towards delivering test frameworks that replace manual effort. Something that we have done for many years, of course. But nowadays, we are talking about procedural generation of assets, procedural generation of design. AI-enabled system that allows you to create many facets of art in a game automatically, and by feeding some inputs and then allowing the AI to recombine them. And you can see at the end of the spectrum the opportunity of having full games being built by the AI. You feed the AI the code for thousands of games, and then you say, go recombine these into a final form. So yeah, I mean, the thing about gaming that I find very exciting is that I think for any great company in the game sector, not making innovation as a central strategy pillar or a key competitive differentiator is very risky, because the game space is particularly prone to creative destruction. And you might have heard this word from me, this expression from me. Austrian economist Joseph Schumpeter coined it. He basically says that in any industry, you are bound to see innovations that disturb a set paradigm of effectively generating economic activity, of making money, right? So somebody, you are Kodak, you're a specialist in photo film, and the advent of the digital camera will take you out of business entirely. I mean, I chose the Kodak example because it's particularly egregious, because actually Kodak invented the digital camera and then decided not to pursue it because it would mess up with their film business, photo film business, they were making billions of dollars from that. And lo and behold, of course, others took it on, released digital cameras, and put Kodak out of business entirely, when they could have been, they could open new markets with it.
But this happens in game development. I mean,
all the time.
We've seen
year.
Apple. Yes, we've seen Apple fuck people up, fuck companies up over and over. Like, you remember back in the day when the iPhone came out, and like, okay, this is a revolution, and then they come up with the store. And then all these guys swarm the store, indie developers, and they're making games that they're selling for $0.99, $0.99. You remember that? And we were saying, back then we were saying, who said this? I don't know who it was, but someone was making a bet that the industry will turn into a $0.99 model. And then everybody's making this, like all the big guys, EA, Ubisoft, they're trying to get into that niche market, and they're making $0.99 games, and boom, freemium shows up, fucks everything up over and over. Yes, innovation will mess a lot of things up. So yeah, kind of going back to what you're saying, it's important to have that.
And then subscription shows up, and it's kind of messing with the free-to-play model.
Yes.
So, I mean, obviously, free-to-play is here to stay. I truly believe that. But Yes, every year there's new technologies, new game genres emerging. It's a very creative field. It is exceptionally resilient to crisis. They used to say that the games industry can weather any recession, right? Lo and behold, it apparently thrives in a pandemic,
We
which
just
we're
did,
so
yeah.
lucky, right? We're so lucky. I'm very grateful for that. On the flip side, you cannot rest on your laurels. That's the key thing. You need to be anti-fragile, meaning constantly
Hmm.
adapting, constantly dancing, welcoming new ideas, never accepting the status quo as your only reality, and yearning to learn. That's why, coming back to the learning or lifelong learning, we believe has to be a core value of every person at Amber. And then, yes, Amber can provide the resources and the environment for you to develop your skills, but it really starts with you wanting to grow. And I don't mean just to develop your career and make more money, wanting knowledge as an end in itself. Look, because innovation is important for us, we decided that our mission has to be defined in those terms. So our mission is to evolve the science and art of play. That's if we're describing Amber's identity, this is it. The full statement says they were a community of artisans delivering positive impact by evolving the science and art of play. And it speaks to our community. We talked about this a little bit. It speaks to the fact that we're all artisans. We an artisan is a craft person who aims to achieve mastery at his chosen discipline. That's why we chose, since mastery is embedded in the definition, that was the perfect term to describe our people. Delivering positive impact, as we kind of parse through this, it's not about delivering value to the customers, which obviously is a primary goal of ours, but delivering value to society, to the game dev community. And then evolving the science and art of play, that's a poetic form to say to innovate.
Hmm.
We're evolving the science, which, the technical aspects of our work, the programming, the engineering, and then the art, the design, the production of art that is implicit into making games and evolving them, making them better. And you evolve things through breakthrough innovation, but also through incremental innovation, which is unfortunately not as dramatic, but really powerful if you think about it as a daily activity. Every day you do something a little bit better, and in years that can become an amazing and insurmountable competitive advantage. All right.
All right. You want
We
to take. We have a question. We have a
Yes.
question from a very dear friend of ours. His name is Kostin Mihai. Hey, Kostin. Thank you for being with us on the podcast. And he says, I would like to, if possible, that Mr. Mihai Pohontu to describe what he defines as an emerging market. By the way, I'm a great fan. Love the philosophy behind your development.
Oh, thank you, Kostika. Um, well, so in emerging market, by the generally accepted definition, are countries that are in the course of developing. And if you search for emerging market, there's a UN accepted categorization of those countries. Um, I dare say so. Romania is still considered an emerging market. So is Mexico. Generally speaking, you find a lot of these countries in Latin America, Africa, Middle East, Southeast Asia. And it's a broad term. I think you can put some stats and parameters on it. And that distinguishes those markets from the markets that are established and developed, like Western Europe and US and Canada and Japan, Korea, so on and so forth.
Mm.
And I see another question here. What do you think about Tencent trying to buy EA and Rockstar Studios? Well, I think so. First of all, I definitely admire what Tencent is doing. I think they've made 30 M&A deals last year. they don't necessarily buy companies outright. They just take controlling, or they take interest. They take a minority share. Sometimes they take a controlling interest in the company. They're just effectively leveraging a position in talented game developers around the world. And that's, they're extremely, um, how should I say, aggressive about it. Like they have a concerted effort to continue to acquire interest in all these game developers. And as you know, they own many illustrious names in games. So and their propensity to incorporate other companies. Supercell is obviously a famous example. I do believe they have controlling interest in Epic also, uh, just two of the many different companies that Tencent owns. To me, it makes sense that at some point they would stop making investments in, let's say, quote unquote, smaller developers. These 13 investments they made last year are generally in studios, individual studios. So, even the most successful ones, they are not, they're dwarfed by the size of Tencent. I believe they make something like $10 billion a year in revenue, right? It's a behemoth. And that, that growth of Tencent has to be fueled by incorporating more and more revenue streams. They have a good game going. It's a game that we see replicated with Keywords as well. Keywords has incorporated many different companies in the services sector. And as they incorporate these companies, their revenue grows and the stock market reacts positively. And that gives them even more money to invest in acquiring other companies. It's sort of a virtuous cycle, but you have to keep it going. And yes, you can keep it going by making 30 acquisitions per year, or at some point you're going to look at like some pretty juicy big opportunities out there. So it's not surprising to me that they're looking at EA and Rockstar. Frankly, they are looking at Take-Two as well. I'm not sure if you're aware. And yeah, at some point they will start gobbling up all the other big 500-pound gorillas out there. So oh, by the way, they'll have an interest in Ubisoft. They helped Ubisoft fend off the Vivendi acquisition, right? So man, they're everywhere. Soon enough, we'll all work for Tencent, except Amber.
Yeah, I think we will probably end up with these kind of like things on our back that says made in China or owned by Tencent or by Amazon. We'll see.
I was joking about that. We're actually in business with Tencent, and we're delivering services to them as we speak. And but we're also very indie, and we're probably not going to sell the company to any suitors in the short time frame.
Because it's not about the money.
No, we have a goal. We are trying to reach City of Amber.
Yeah.
And that is what animates us. And I'm glad to say it. I mean, it's really not just me. It's like us, the collective, the people that run the company. And hopefully if we're successful with this cultural exercise, because I don't think I had a chance to explain to you what has happened in the past year and a half, but we have worked so hard at kind of figuring out our strategy and our vision, our mission, our values. We haven't talked about values, but that could be the subject of another podcast. And we are now at the point where we need to start disseminating those within all of Amber, because we do have a culture, and it's not the ideal culture that we want. We actually have a good progressive culture. We are a good company to work for, but we can be better. So in the past year and a half, we had many discussions at many different levels of management with consultants. We read books. I read some amazing books during this time. And actually, frankly, I'm a much bigger fan of business management theory than I used to be. I had read some books before, but I had this mistaken impression the business management theory is just kind of academic fodder and basically one person's intellectual musings, offering various templates for success. But what really matters is operational reality and where the rubber meets the road, not theory. Well, I stand corrected. There's actually a lot of interesting stuff in the theory that is fueled by scientific studies, many of whom have been defined in the last 20 years. So they're really fresh. They haven't hit the economy at large, right? Or there's a few businesses that are starting to like feed themselves from that. You know, there's a company in Romania that we look at with admiration, and it's not UiPath. We're actually not big fans of UiPath's culture, even though we admire what they've achieved as a business. From a culture perspective, is Autonom. Is Mark Stefan's company. They are effectively transportation logistics company, and they have a really strong and amazing culture with sky high employee engagement. One of the features that Autonom has is that, you know, first of all, they take culture seriously. They encourage people to read books. They on the subject, and they have one of the most amazing like learning programs internally that you can find in that industry.
Mm.
And so yeah, they have cult levels of engagement in their company, and as I said, it was a journey for us. We read, we learned, we spent time with consultants, we fought, you know, because you know sometimes you just have to air out grievances and concerns, and to achieve consensus is not always easy, especially when you're in a room of 15 other super smart people that all have individual biases. But you know, we got to this point, and now we have some clarity and we have a unified perspective, and now we are going to live those values.
But let
We're,
me stop you right there. Let me stop you right
yeah.
there. What's the connection? Because this is not super evident right now. What's the connection between strategy and culture? Why do the two go hand in hand?
Well, culture is, well, so core philosophy, right? The mission,
Mm-hmm.
vision, values. That's the fundamental aspects on which the strategy is built. Everything has to be coherent, from mission, vision, from the most abstract, you know, part of culture, all the way to objectives and even further into tactics. It has to align in comprehensive fashion so that you can struck, you know, any business challenge with clarity of purpose. And
Mm.
your strategy has to emanate from like shared values, and you know the vision first of all tells you where you're going, right? Let's go back to Oz for a second.
Yeah.
Okay, yellow brick road, right? Gets to Oz, you know, after a long journey, right? You have to understand what is the destination, right? Vision gives you that. Mission gives you a sense of who you are. You know, the strategy is the chart, is the map on how to get to Oz. And you know, for us that's City of Amber. And but they all have to be in the same universe. They have to be aligned, and you know, they have to make sense together. You cannot have a vision that says we want to be the best in the world, and then you know, a strategy that basically says we want to have fun and just hang out with our friends. You know, like you need performance in order to be the best in the world. Right? So you know, it all has to be in harmonious continuity. You know, one, and it starts with the most abstract levels, and you build on top of them until you get to the tactics. And even the tactics have to exemplify your values. They cannot be dissonant, because otherwise people will look at you and will become cynical about your intent. They may say, you're manipulative. You know, you're just saying these words, you're putting them on the wall, but you don't really believe them. Or you are, you know, mm, not not consistent. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Like you say you have those values, but you kind of don't. You know, so your real values are something else, and um, and that's definitely something to watch for. You have to explain yourself a lot, I guess. I mean, when you make controversial decisions, you have to create a space where people will tell you when you're wrong.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Because otherwise you don't see it. You don't know. It's basically a power led organization. I think like so how do you give a voice to such a big company? And I think that we're kind of we're in that time, in that place in history where we can do that, like kind of going back to GameSpot we were discussing earlier on, where the stock market is
We're gonna
getting
do stuff before the podcast
no,
is
but
over.
you were mentioning, so you're mentioning how the stock market just got democratized, and we're not only seeing that, we're seeing that with the advent of the internet, with so much technology, with so much communication, we're seeing more and more, we're hearing more and more voices. And boy, that's a big problem, especially for the powers that be. But I'm kind of curious. We're seeing something very similar in companies as well. We've seen this in Amber. How do you give a voice to so many people? How do you kind of create the culture? Because I would argue that culture is created by the founding fathers of the company, and then it just sticks, and then people who join just follow along.
Uh, Culture reflects the values that the company has at any given moment. The founding fathers, as you tell them, may emanate a set of principles, but they don't have any substance if they are not lived by and an integral part of everyone's reality.
Mm.
That's why for most companies, the set of values they put on the wall has nothing to do with the actual culture. Then the most egregious example of that is Enron. Enron had like values like honesty and integrity, and they were cooking the books. They were like infamous for cooking the books, and obviously that bankrupted the company. And it was a really extremely aggressive, rapacious, sharky culture. That was the real culture of the company, but it didn't say like win at all cost on the wall. It said honesty and integrity. So, yeah, the founding fathers may have that, uh, may have ideals, but they don't necessarily follow that those ideals translate into culture. So the really hard work is not to come up with the core philosophy and the strategy. The really hard work is to make that happen in reality. And there are many techniques to doing this. And the way Amber is choosing to do it is that we are effectively training right now what we call culture envoys. It's
Mm.
a group of about 50 leaders from across the organization that are effectively replicating our conversation in a larger setting over many different days of training, and on top of that, with numerous courses on coaching and employee mobilization. And each of these envoys will then take 10 people from across the org, and they will replicate this journey with them. We'll make sure that they understand, like you do, perhaps a bit better now because we talked for almost 2 hours. They understand this entire construct of core philosophy and strategy and objectives, and they have a chance to, not only understand it, but then transform it into practice by defining actions for their group
Mm.
to engender the culture they want to see in the company that feeds into those values. Okay, so for us, this will be like another amazing journey, and it will take many years, right? It's not something that you do overnight. But I strongly believe that if you want to have a successful, scaled business, you need culture to be your secret weapon.
Mhm.
If you have a strong culture, you are building a business for the ages, and you are building an environment that you can rightfully be proud of. And I don't think that Amber can fulfill his vision without having this strong progressive culture. It will be exceedingly hard to do so, and probably impossible unless we achieve this goal. And so, yes, you do need process, you need talented people, you do need clarity of purpose, but you also need a strong culture. And yeah, we haven't talked about this at length in the context of studio mastery, but we see a triad of frameworks that
Mhm.
will help us achieve studio mastery. There's the studio development framework, and roughly it's split into four components. We have technology, like the tech stack that is involved for each studio, the structure, how do you organize the teams, talent. You have to find the right people with the right skills, and there's methodologies behind all of these on how to achieve success. And then the fourth one is the one that is most elusive, but is the culture of the studio, right? So the SDF effectively has culture as an inner component. And then, of course, we have the game development framework, which most of the folks that work in the industry are familiar with, that organizes the development process. And then we have the agile development framework, which is our project management methodology. And those three together are, I think, the secret sauce for how we will achieve mastery from a methodological perspective.
But where do you what? So you're basically saying that knowing agile and knowing how to program is not enough. Is that what you're saying? Is this are you saying that there's a deeper layer that you call a studio development framework that kind of makes everything sit on top of it? And that has to do with culture.
Yes.
Am I?
It's a
Explain
component.
that a bit.
It's a component of the framework. Look, Amber's destiny and what will make, I think, Amber a much more valuable company, what might make Amber a unicorn in the years to come, is our ability to perfect the practice of creating great studios, taking studios that are middling or average and building them into world-class studios, right? I mean, we've discussed this at some length, right? But you need a way to achieve that result. You need to understand, studio maturity level, in many different domains, and have techniques for increasing that maturity or expertise level across those domains. And one of the areas that are absolutely critical for studio success is to have a healthy, progressive culture. Now, this can be inspired by what happens in Amber overall, but ultimately the studio as a working unit is a team or a series of teams that work together in harmonious fashion. They themselves will need to draft, on the basis of these broad principles that Amber has created, their own identity. And without their own identity, they will not be self-sustaining on this long road towards mastery. That's basically what I'm saying. We actually have an interesting question here. Kostika is back at it and asking me, do you think the culture that you mentioned, belongs to a closed industry as the games industry can appear? No, it doesn't. I think, first of all, there are broadly resonant concepts of culture that can effectively stretch across many different industries. I'm looking at our values and operating principles. I have to tell you, our first value is teamwork. That's what Amber truly believes in. We believe that we succeed together. And I will read you the description of how we see the teamwork value. And I dare you, this could probably apply to any industry in the world. It says this: we believe the team comes before the individual, the collective before the ego, we before me. We see our staff as partners, not employees, and our managers as servant leaders. The inverted pyramid that we were talking about earlier. Our teammates are self-empowered, entrepreneurial, and responsible business owners, holding their peers accountable for results and striving for greatness together. Our managers have the functional role of coaches, trainers, mentors, guiding the team and removing obstacles. They act in the service of the team, managing by values and goals, using active listening and focus on learning. For our teams to thrive, we create an environment of open communication, filtered through honesty and integrity, where every voice can be heard, leaving room for challenge and debate. Okay, what company in the world that actually lives this value wouldn't you want to be part of? It doesn't matter what industry you go. It just makes sense that you would want an organization like this, as opposed to, pretty much most of the other companies in the world today, which are hierarchical. They give individual performance incentives that basically, in effect, turn the workplace into fucking Game of Thrones. I mean, we've all worked at corporations, right? It's basically like a, once winner take all mentality. Like you step on the, everybody's bodies to get to a higher position. It's all territorial. It's like fiefdom against fiefdom. That's not it. We have been in that environment, and we have seen that it's not working to maximize human potential. There's a tremendous amount of waste. Almost any executive that has worked at a large American corporation will tell you that he or she spends an inordinate amount of time playing politics or fending off the politics of others. That is waste. You know, in uh, in Toyota's lean manufacturing world, that is the worst thing that can possibly happen. You know, mudra is called mudra, waste, and you know through Kaizen you fight against waste. You identify the sources and you zap it. Boom. And yeah, the only way to zap that is through culture. Yeah.
And it kind of makes sense, right? I mean, if you have all these smart people, engineers, artists, you kind of want to hear what they have to say. You kind of want them to hold you accountable. When you're making a mistake, you kind of want them to hold you accountable because it's the only way you're going to learn something. Kind of going back to your vision of Amber as a learning organization. You do want people to come over and say, "Hey man, I think you fucked up." And you should have the space in which to say, "No, I don't think so. Here's why I did it." And then start a dialogue. Kind
Yeah.
of going back to the myth of the cave, right? This is where it all fails. When they stoned the guy to death, the guy had went outside, he had seen the truth, he comes back in, he tells them about the truth, and he gets stoned to death.
Yeah,
So you
the
don't
city of
want that to
Amber
happen.
is outside the cave. The city, all you can see there is the projection of the walls, and then the people in the cave are interpreting those shadows. And yeah, sometimes you will need to explain what those shadows mean and how they are indeed a reflection of the perfect forms, or you made a mistake and own up to it and don't do it again. You know, fail
Yeah.
fast.
Fail fast and learn out of that. And hopefully, I think this is the what I like about Amber most because we were kind of going through the mistakes we made. Endurance is so important. Never lose hope. Never always hang on to your dream. Never give up. Never.
Resilience, endurance. You know what? If I didn't have the 2017 experience and somebody asked me what's the most important thing for an entrepreneur, I would have, you know, come up with like vision, you know, because we are drunk on these mental models, right? Of you know Steve Jobs and Bill Gates and Elon Musk. You know, you need to have an incredible vision and foresight. Or maybe I would have said something else, you know, operational, you need to be an operational mastermind and know how to assemble teams. But right now, having that hard won battle scars to speak of, I will say this. The most important quality of an entrepreneur is resilience, being able to withstand the harsh reality of operating a business and persisting.
Then that's what being human is all about. That's what learning is. You're gonna have to give up things that you thought are good, things that you thought made sense, and that's gonna kill you slowly but surely. You're gonna give up things. But guess what? Once you give them up, once you learn, you're gonna become a better person.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you will become a better person also as a result of um, combining your efforts with the rest of the collective that is pursuing that goal. I
Mm.
mean, there's constructive friction there, and that pushes you to evolve as well. You know, it's the enterprise can evolve, the culture can evolve, and the individual can evolve. And the shared experience of crossing through tough times can make or break a team. But man, when it makes a team, it's such a wonderful thing to be outside of it, on the other end of it, and look behind. Like you can really take on the world, and that is the story of Avalon, right? Avalon has been through this in the past. You mentioned, you know, Cinderella, for example.
Mhm.
Oh my God, that project was so fucking hard for us, right? It's incredible. And then we had, you know, the false starts with. We will not name the partner and the project itself, but we had the false start, you know, project that we developed halfway through before the rug was pulled from under us, and yeah, that was another like hard lesson to swallow. But we endured, we persisted, and Avalon is an amazing casual game studio. I cannot, I mean, for us, 2021 will be an amazing year. Part of the reason because of the awesome games that you have created, Gabi.
Though that is my second family, and it's in a great way the family that I got to choose. It's not the family that I was given, but it's the family that I got to choose. Those guys are amazing. Suffering will make you better.
In many ways. Let's talk about GameStop for a second.
Let's talk about GameStop for a second. Yeah.
Okay, GameStonk. That's the code name.
GameStonk, is that what they call it?
Yeah, they call it GameStonk because these are the Reddit trolls and the shit posters of Discord and all of that. They call stocks stonks, and they rechristened GameStop GameStonk, and their foundational values are YOLO. You only live once. Better put money on the shit.
Speaking of culture.
And HODL, HODL, right? Like hold, it doesn't matter what happened to the market, you hold on in there. And that value set, by the way, comes from Bitcoin. HODL, it was a Bitcoin. Bitcoin had a pretty good run, and then like a couple of years back, it fell off a cliff. And the Bitcoin community, the cryptocurrency community said, no, we're going to hold our position no matter what happens. We lost a bunch of money. It doesn't matter. We're still in. So these guys are not going to give up. And I think it's really interesting what they're doing. Look, it's an exemplification of populism. They're really, obviously they're making money, which is, I think, amazing. Obviously, this is also Ponzi scheme. These companies don't deserve the kind of favors that are being bestowed on them. And at some point, people will lose money, right? It's inevitable.
Well, GameStop no longer exists, right? I mean, they work on a model which was selling games, retail games.
Yeah, in brick and mortar store.
Brick and mortar,
it still exists. They're just a kind of failed business of the past that maybe has an opportunity to reinvent itself in a new form and become an online retailer of success. But as you know, that's not an easy thing to do, especially when it's not in the company's DNA. There's a guy that is an investor in GameStop, and he's the one. He's an activist investor, and he said, GameStop needs to reimagine itself as an internet business. And I'm like, okay, good luck, bro. And that shit takes a lot of people of skill and vision, and GameStop doesn't have that. What's happening though is that the same populist trend that, in a sense, unfortunately, put Trump in power, we're seeing in the stock market right now. And, to some extent, we're talking about the same characters too. These trolls, a lot of them are meme lords and incels and whatever, like a really motley crew of nefarious characters. That are assembled in a very loose community of sorts, and they have one shared interest, of course, to make money, but also to stick it to the powers that be, and these are Wall Street elites. So it's like, yes, in a way, you only can do that at scale, and individually they don't have the means to operate at that scale, but together as this loose confederation of punks, they can take it up to the powers that be, to the men, as it were, and they can, bankrupt some of these hedge funds. And I think Wall Street will need to get very astute about reading the tea leaves on Reddit. Your investors checking Reddit about any post that may galvanize the community to stick it. Because on the fundamentals, I mean, come on, BlackBerry,
Nokia.
What else? What else did they put focus on? Anyway, it doesn't
so hang on. Are these guys doing this just because they want to give the finger to the system? Is that it?
They want to make money.
They want to make money.
They want to give the finger to the system, and giving the finger to the system is a galvanizing, rallying cry that can assemble and keep this community together. Come on, let's talk about culture for a second, right? It's not enough to want to make money to build a community. You need something else, a glue that keeps everyone together. And being a rebellious punk and sticking it to the men is pretty powerful motivator. Yeah. All right. So that's what's happening. I think it's exciting. I think it's also a little bit worrisome, if you will, because again, these populist movements, fueled by a rejection of their system and some anarchist cred, can really have a negative impact too. They can be used for good or for ill. And the Trump example is for ill. Clearly, by I don't care who you are, you can try to justify this to me until you're blue in the face about how Trump benefited the United States and made America great again. No, he didn't by almost any measure imaginable. And unfortunately, the populist fuel is largely responsible for sustaining his rise. Now, a lot of Republicans, joined the bandwagon, and you know, half of the population of the voting population of the U.S. supported him. So obviously not everyone is a Reddit troll, but you cannot discount the galvanizing effect of these guys.
But
Assembled in.
isn't that how we grow? Isn't that how we learn? Isn't that, I mean, I think that these things have their own merit, which is we're learning. We're gonna make better mistakes. Also, but kind of, so I think that we've learned, by the way, from the current political uh, mishaps. I think that we're learning a lot, and democracy is only gonna get better after this. But I also think, look, it's things are changing super fast and they no longer need to make sense. I think that this is the beauty that we're reaching. Things no longer need to make sense. People can just enjoy themselves and just crash businesses, crash the federal buildings. It's beautiful in that way. And you know what? It's not always going to be safe and it's not always going to be pleasant, but that's evolution.
Yeah, and
It's
democracy is messy. Like we said, okay, what is happening here is that the stock market is democratized. It's not the playground of the very rich anymore, because you have forces like this that can disrupt the established paradigms, and they can really anger the status quo. I mean, these guys right now are trying to basically um, leverage anything like regulation, their influence over platforms like Robinhood, in order to stop these trades from happening, because they're losing billions of dollars. It's like infuriating to them, and for good reason. But that's what democracy in action looks like. It's not pretty, and sometimes you get Trump. The key, though, is to recover from that, and hopefully you get back to this famous phrase that the arc of history bends towards justice. That Martin Luther King said this, and obviously he thought that God is the primary driver for that. But as it turns out, that it bends towards justice because of the humanism inherent in all of us. So eventually there's like a course correction. Now, can you survive through the aberrations in that path? With Trump, it was really close. I mean, we really felt at many inflection points that he is tipping into authoritarianism. And the most eloquent expression of that was at the very end, right? When he went completely nuts, and incited the revolt against his own Congress, and actually not his own, our Congress, to be to be clear.
That was scary, by the way. And I know a lot of people that were thinking, so what happens? If it has gotten to this, what happens? Are we getting the next Franz Ferdinand? Is this what's going to happen? Are we going to see people storming Biden's inauguration? Is that what's going to happen? But that would have
it
been
didn't happen.
chaos.
It didn't happen. Obviously, they deployed like 30,000 National Guard troops across the U.S. to ensure that no state capitals and obviously the inauguration would not be affected. Um, uh, no, I don't think so. I actually think that from the inside, I can tell you that I feel the US is much healthier and much more robust and much more economically viable than it's commonly given credit for. These democratic systems are messy, but they also have an incredible ability to recover. Again, they're anti-fragile. So that's
Mm.
really cool. And that's a lesson that we can take
That's a
into.
great book, by the way.
Yeah,
For
Nassim
people,
Taleb.
that's one of my favorite
Absolutely.
books.
Yes.
Yes.
Come on, since we're on this topic, let's recommend some reading to people that are interested in culture. I would say Antifragile by Nassim
Hmm.
Taleb, Creativity Inc. by Ed Catmull. Which one we should throw in the mix right here? I
Do you
would
know?
throw Toyota Way to Lean Leadership, so you can
Yeah,
learn about that stuff. And you were going to say something?
I was gonna say the hard thing about hard things. That's important. Because we were talking about resilience earlier on. And
Yeah.
look, the business is going to go through good times, the business is going to go through bad times. You have to hold on to what you want to build and just follow that. Seven Habits of Highly Effective People. That's the book that has influenced me the most. And I think it really kind of, we were talking about culture and we were talking about principles and values. That those values that Stephen Covey depicts, those have withstood the test of time for the past 30 years. And I'm sure that it's going to be even more.
Mhm.
Want to add in anything else?
Yeah, absolutely. No Rules, Rules by Reed Hastings. Um, about the incredible culture that he's building at Netflix, which is quite inspirational. And
Yeah.
everyone has seen the Netflix onboarding deck where they can explain their culture. Things like you can take unlimited vacation. As it happens, and Netflix, they have the opposite problem. It's not that people take too much vacation; it's that the people don't take enough vacation because
Mm-hmm.
they appear to be judged by their peers if they do so. So they have to put systems in place to ensure they get people out. And you mentioned numbers like the four dysfunctions of the team. I think that's an interesting one as well,
Big one.
by Lencioni. Um, that's a
I
good.
wanna I
Yeah.
wanna add two more. I have, and this is one of my favorite books. Thus Spoke Zarathustra. That's
Oh,
always
of
such a difficult.
course, and we are all Nietzscheans here.
I love that book because it kind of speaks to the power of becoming a better man through a journey, and how
Mhm.
that is only your only salvation. No one else is gonna save you. You are the man who's gonna save yourself, and you're only gonna do that by suffering and becoming a better person.
We have talked about this in the past, Gabi, about this very book. It was assigned reading for me in a philosophy course in college, and once I started reading it, I couldn't put it down. It was like it only happened to me twice in my life, once with Nietzsche and the second time with Frank Herbert's Dune. Like I
Mm.
basically couldn't stop reading until the book ended.
What's your favorite Dune?
My favorite Dune is the first one. I mean, it's kind of hard not to choose the first one. I mean, I like the entire series, and I don't. When I think of Dune, I don't think in terms of books. I think in terms of the continuum, and I read the entire series. It's up there for me, along with the Foundation and Norman Spinrad and Ursula K. Le Guin, the
Mm-hmm.
series, the Ian Banks, the Culture series, which by the way, that's kind of why we chose the name Envoys for our culture leaders. The ones that are bringing teams together and disseminating culture too. And
I was gonna say read the Amber Cycle, but then what I'm gonna say is don't read the Amber Cycle. I mean, that's a good cycle, but read The Lord of Light. So
yeah,
I got that book from Dragos. Um, and I fell in love with all the concepts in that book
yes,
and the trickster model. That
yeah.
is a book that speaks about the trickster model, and it's so good.
A fantastic book. Actually, I wouldn't even recommend the Chronicles of Number. It's a fantasy series. It's pretty interesting. The concepts are exciting, And actually, I'm not sure if you guys have noticed this. For those of you that have read the Chronicles of Amber, many different entities within Amber are places in the novel, right? And the city of Amber is actually taken from the novel. The pattern is the pattern from the novels. The Lorraine is one of the kind of mythical fantasy shadow of the perfect world of Amber. Also in the novel,
Avalon is the promised land.
Avalon is also a shadow.
Avalon is also a shadow, yes.
So Arden is a mythical forest within the Chronicles of Amber. So yeah, we try to kind of stay within that universe. But that being said, it's not the best book by Roger Zelazny.
Yeah, but
So
it brings some beautiful fantasy to life,
yes,
which is important. Look, we
Also,
should stop.
yeah,
We've
we
been
should
doing
stop.
this for more than 2 hours.
I'm having so much fun, Gabi. I am. Thank you so much for having me. We didn't get to talk about why people are leaving San Francisco, so maybe we can do a
We have
follow up.
we have 20 more seconds before we stop.
Okay, so San Francisco is a victim of its own success. People are leaving because all of a sudden remote work enables you to live anywhere. As a result of this, places like Austin and Seattle and Miami are becoming impossibly expensive. So there will be a reflux back to San Francisco before you know it. I truly believe Frisco is the it's a Renaissance equivalent of Florence.